All right, Ryan, we are live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. How are you? How are you doing, Ryan? Long time no see.
I I know it has been a while. Happy to be back. I think the last time I was here with you all was for some English language learning presentations, and that was fun.
Yes.
But now I'm back to talk about Oregon.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
They are great sessions. Mm-hmm.
it's
Oh,
not
sorry.
my home state, but it's very close.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's wait a few seconds, I guess. So our viewers will join us soon.
Okay.
I think everybody celebrates Thanksgiving Day. So I want to take a moment to say Happy Thanksgiving Day, everybody. And also, I want to say thank you to our viewers and friends who always watch us and support us. And thank you for being with us. So, good evening, everybody. Bishkek American Center is welcoming you, and we are very happy to continue our virtual US state tours. And today we are going to visit Oregon State with our special guest, Ryan Bartlett, US Embassy Bishkek representative. And of course, you have a chance to ask your questions during the live. Don't miss this opportunity. So you can type them in the comment section. And after the presentation, Ryan will answer them. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us once again. And now I want to give a floor to Ryan.
Okay. Thank you so much, Aida. Very happy to be back with you all. Maybe some of you remember me from some of my previous presentations that I was doing over the summer. I think maybe in June or July, I was doing a series of English language learning presentations. We did idioms. We talked about how to write personal statements, cover letters, and some other topics. So today, back to talk to you about the state of Oregon, and happy to take you all on a virtual tour of this beautiful state. This is not my home state. I will tell you that it's very close. My home state is actually Washington State, but I feel like Oregon is kind of like home for me now. When I go back in the summers, usually my family and I, we go back and visit our communities, our families, and we have a house in Portland, Oregon, and so that's where we have our kind of our home base when we go back in the summers. So really, the last maybe 10 or 15 years, I've spent a lot more time in Oregon than I have in Washington State. So I love both states, but I'm actually more recently familiar with Oregon. So that's what I'm going to talk to you all about today. So Ida, you can go ahead and start the presentation. Okay. So again, my name is Ryan Bartlett. I am a representative from the U.S. Embassy. I work in the public affairs section. I am the outreach program manager, and do a lot of outreach coordination with all the American corners in the country. And a big thank you, of course, to Aida and the team, not only in the Bishkek AC, but all around the country. All of our amazing AC coordinators and staff and our virtual programming team have done an amazing job switching all of our traditional outreach program to virtual outreach programming. So thank you, Aida, and to all of the other colleagues that are working so hard now to do the virtual programming. So yes, I'm going to talk to you about Oregon, USA. There's a few different images on this first slide. The first one on the upper left-hand corner is an image of course, Nike. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. This presentation is not sponsored by Nike, so this is just to point out that this is one of the most famous companies that is from Oregon, the state of Oregon. The company was founded in 1964 in Portland, Oregon, and the headquarters for the company is still based in Portland, Oregon. It's a huge company, of course. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the iconic swoosh symbol. They make, of course, tennis shoes and all sorts of athletic gear. So yes, that is from the state of Oregon. And on the opposite corner, there's a picture of a bird, a yellow bird. That is the Oregon state bird. As you may know, if you've been watching most of the virtual state tours, every U.S. state has a state bird that represents their state. It's usually a bird that's native to the state, and this is the western meadowlark. There's also a flower, a state flower. Every state has a flower, but the flower for Oregon is not a very interesting flower, so I didn't include that on the slide. It's an Oregon grape, for the record, but not as beautiful as the western meadowlark. And then on the lower left-hand corner is the state flag. Every state in the U.S. has a flag. This is Oregon's flag. As you can see, it's 1959 is the year that Oregon was founded, was created. And the symbol, you can see a bunch of little dots around kind of a shield. Well, those are actually, if you look closely, those are stars, and there are 33 stars. And that represents Oregon being the 33rd state in the U.S. States. The 33rd state. So it's more, it's a newer state because we have 50 states, of course. So if it's number 33, it's fairly new. And as you may know, the United States, it's kind of started on the East Coast and moved across the states and ended with the West Coast. So the states on the west of the United States are the newer states in general. And then lastly, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a symbol of a beaver. I don't know if you can see that that animal there. It's kind of a small image, but that is kind of like the Oregon state's animal that represents the state. And that is on the back side of the flag. If you ever come to Oregon and you see the Oregon state flag flying, that symbol is on the back side of the flag, and I think that's the only flag in the U.S. that has a different image on the back side. So that's kind of something unique about the state of Oregon. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how do you pronounce Oregon? Right? There's lots of different ways that people pronounce the state. You've already heard me say it. I kind of take the second pronunciation here. Oregon, right? I say Oregon, right? Only two syllables. You can also say Oregon, like the number one pronunciation, Oregon, right? If you hear that, there's three syllables. Don't worry, this is not an English class, but of course, because of education, I have to talk about the correct pronunciation for Oregon. So if I was saying it slowly and clearly and trying to emphasize the pronunciation, I would probably go with pronunciation number one, Oregon, Oregon. But normally in just natural speech, I probably say Oregon more. So it sounds like, you know, an organ in your body, like your lungs as an organ, your heart as an organ. Also, you know, an organ is a musical instrument, kind of like a big piano. Same pronunciation. The incorrect pronunciation is Oregon. Sometimes you will hear people pronounce the state Oregon. This is not the correct pronunciation. Don't say Oregon. It's either Oregon or Oregon. So those are your options. And this beautiful image is a picture of the gorge, the Columbia River Gorge. It's one of the biggest rivers in the country. It borders Washington State to the north and Oregon to the south. And it's a gorgeous area. It's very protected. There's lots of hiking and cycling and boating you can do here, and very close to the main city of Portland. Okay, let's go.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start with a little geography. Where is Oregon? Oregon, again, like I said, is on the west coast of the United States. I'm sure all of you are familiar with a map of the United States. The red state, of course, is the state of Oregon, and it is between Washington. The Washington state is to the north, and that's the state where I am from, very close to Seattle. And then to the south of the state of Oregon is the state of California. And those three states make up the west coast of the United States. Of course, on the east coast, you have many more states that make up the east coast. Off the top of my head, I don't know the number, but I think it's around 15. But on the west coast, we only have three states. They're much bigger, and they are actually, you're going to see a size comparison in relation to Kyrgyzstan. But the state of Oregon is very, very similar size to the land of Kyrgyzstan. So go ahead and move to the next slide.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a zoomed in of the state of Oregon. And just really quickly to talk about the geography, on the west side, which is the left side, of course, of the map, it's more green, as you can see. And that represents a lot more rainfall, the green side, correct. And that is where the bigger cities are. That's where most of the population live in the state. Partly because, yeah, it does rain more, so there's more agriculture, more trade, more business, more commerce. The capital of the state of Oregon is Salem. As you can see, there's a white dot there. Yep. But usually most states, as you probably know by now, the capital city is not the biggest city. So the biggest city is Portland, and that is just to the north. That's kind of on the border between Oregon and Washington. But yeah, as far as the geography goes, the most of the state is not very green. It's much drier, much more arid. And as you can see, kind of in the middle of the state, we have three pyramids. And those are the three biggest mountains in the country, in the state, excuse me. The mountain range is the Cascades, and it runs from north to south. You can kind of see Mount Hood, that's the biggest one, 3,426 meters. And then we have Mount Jefferson at 3,220 meters, and then at the South Sister at 3,757 meters. So those are the biggest peaks, and lots of beautiful mountains in Oregon. But it really changes the weather between the west side of the state and the east side. It kind of traps the weather, and it rains a lot more on the west side of the mountains. But that's essentially what the state looks like. Oh, on the east side of the state is Idaho. That's the other state that I did not mention. And then you can also see the southeastern side of Oregon, Nevada. And then, of course, the water on the west side is the Pacific Ocean. So that is the geography of Oregon. You can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, and like I said, very similar size to Kyrgyzstan. Completely different shape, as you can see, but these two images are overlaid on top of each other, and it's almost essentially the same square kilometers. I don't know what the number is, but just to give you a perspective, Oregon and Kyrgyzstan are very similar in size. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, next slide. So yeah, I'm going to share some facts about Oregon, some of the things that I find the most interesting. Of course, um, everybody will notice different things if they go to Oregon. Everyone will appreciate things differently. I tend to appreciate more of the natural features when I go to places. I love the outdoors. I love nature. I love to explore. I love hiking and camping and skiing and cycling. So this is one of the most beautiful places in the state. This is called Crater Lake, and this was actually formed by a volcanic crater exploding, and it has formed a very, very deep lake. This is, I think, the deepest lake in the United States. It is 592 meters deep. And it's also fairly high elevation. It's 1,883 meters above sea level. So it's up in the mountains. It's basically at the top of a volcano, of a dormant volcano. But it's a very deep lake, and there's an island in the middle as well. But it's absolutely stunning to see in person. It's hard to capture the beauty in a photograph, but this might give you an idea of what it looks like. But it's famous for being the deepest lake in the United States. Okay, next slide. Okay, Oregon is also famous for mushroom hunting. This is probably something that most people in Kyrgyzstan have not done because it's much drier in Kyrgyzstan than it is in Oregon. It rains so much in Oregon, especially in Western Oregon, where most of the population live. But in places that it rains a lot, usually there's a lot of mushrooms that grow. And so there's whole communities and social clubs that have formed around hunting for mushrooms. And there's many, many, many different species of mushrooms, some that are very, very rare and hard to find. Usually what people are looking for are the edible mushrooms to find and cook and enjoy in different recipes and different foods. Of course, you have to be extremely careful, and you have to know what you are looking for, and you have to correctly identify mushrooms before you eat them, because they can be very, very dangerous. If you pick the wrong mushroom and you eat it, you could be poisoned. So I don't think that's a big problem in Kyrgyzstan. There's not a lot of mushrooms, but in Oregon, there's many, many, many different types of mushrooms, and that's a popular activity. Okay, next slide. Another thing that is very famous for is their craft beer, also known as micro beer. And Bishkek now, they have a couple different craft breweries. One is Brewster's, I think, and another is Save the Ales. So very kind of specialty, unique beers that people are making, but there's so many in Oregon now. When you go to the store and you try to find a beer that you want to try, it's wow, there's so many options. It's it's difficult to pick a beer that you might want to try. But if you are interested in beer, then you should go basically to the West Coast to sample the many, many different kinds of delicious beer they have. Okay, next slide. Like I mentioned before, cycling is very popular in Oregon. The picture on the left, of course, is mountain biking, which I probably right now is my favorite sport. In the summer, at least. I like to do a lot of mountain biking, and the woods, the forests are so beautiful, and there's many, many different trail systems, very well maintained, very large communities that work together to build these mountain biking trails, and help preserve the forest and respect nature. And it's great exercise, a great way to be together with people. And even during COVID, which a lot of social options are limited, but that's one of the things that you can do easily and stay socially distanced. So I did a lot of cycling in the mountains this summer when I was back. And then, of course, the picture on the left is cycling in the city, more like people that are commuting, right? Traveling back and forth between their homes and their work, or to go to the store, to go to the market, to do errands, or just for exercise. There's a very big network of trails and bike paths and maps where you can navigate the city. Both Portland is the major city, but in other cities as well. Salem, I think, in Corvallis and Eugene and Medford, the other big cities. Lots of people bike all over. So if you like cycling, Oregon is a really good place to visit. Okay, next slide. And as I mentioned before, there is some really good skiing as well. Fairly close to Portland. Most of the big cities, you have skiing about an hour and a half drive from the city. So similar to Bishkek, I think. You have lots of different, in Bishkek, you can go to Zil or Aktash, Pashkasu, Chunkerchuk, and yeah, same thing in Portland or in Eugene, lots of different options to go skiing. So that's another one of my favorite activities to do in Oregon in the winter. Okay, next slide. And the coast is absolutely beautiful. Of course, the weather on the Oregon coast is not always beautiful and sunny like in this photo. But if you get to experience a beautiful sunny day on the Oregon coast, it is amazing. Most of the year it's pretty cold and rainy, foggy usually, and the water is always cold. So you're probably not going to be swimming in this water very much. But just for being on the beach and enjoying the nature, it's really, really beautiful. It's kind of where the mountains meet the ocean. So you kind of have the best of both types of landscape, and lots of great seafood and beautiful fresh air. And yeah, it's one of my favorite places in Oregon as well. Okay, next slide. And wildfires were a very, very big problem this year. You might have heard in the news. Yeah, it was tragic that so many fires happened in the state of Oregon and in California, mainly this year. It was devastating, and I was there when the wildfires were very bad. And luckily, my family and I were safe. Most of the wildfires were not in places where people live. There were some cities that, some small towns that got a lot of damage, and some were completely burned. I don't remember the total number of people that lost their lives, but of course there were some people that died. But yeah, just the amount of damage and destruction to nature was really tragic. It was sad to see. It was sad to witness. But this is something that keeps happening. Every year there seems to be more wildfires, and I think, of course, climate change has something to do with that, right? When it's really dry in the summers, and then all it takes is a spark, right? So yeah, I think a lot of the fires this year in Oregon were caused by high winds. There was like a storm that blew the electrical lines down, and they caused a spark, and the spark started massive fires that took months to put out. And yeah, it was sad, but it's a part of the Northwest part of Oregon, something to think about. Definitely late in the year, usually September is a year that as a month, sorry, that we have a lot of problems with wildfires and smoke. So maybe not the best month to visit Oregon if that's what you're considering. But yeah, we're trying to figure out how to prevent them and how to be safe, of course. But it's definitely a problem that we struggle with. So, okay, next slide. Okay, something else recently, especially this past year, that Oregon has been in the news, especially the city of Portland, the largest city. There's been a lot of protests after the killing of George Floyd. There was a lot of protests for social justice, essentially for Black Lives Matters, and against police brutality. There's a lot of activism and a very strong culture of social justice in Portland, and people that challenge the government and want to see change. And this is part of democracy. You know, this is how you communicate to your leaders that that you want something to change. Of course, we've seen protests and we've seen examples of this in Bishkek as well. Sometimes it turns violent. I think most of the time it's not, but people are very emotional, of course, about these issues. And I think it's good, and I think I'm proud that people in Portland have this strong culture of social justice, and they want to speak up for what they believe in and what they feel needs to change. So yeah, there was, I think, months every night of protests after the killing of George Floyd, trying to make a change and prevent police brutality, and especially against minorities. So that was something that was in the news a lot this past year. Okay, and as you notice in this photo, you can see a lot of people wearing masks. So I'm not going to get too much into COVID, but yeah, I think people in Oregon are really usually doing a pretty good job at being careful. Not everybody is wearing a mask, of course, but I think if you look carefully, you can see a lot of people in this protest wearing masks. So people in Oregon really are doing pretty good at wearing masks, social distancing, and trying to prevent the spread of the virus. So yeah, that's something that, of course, the U.S. is struggling with. We're all struggling with this still right now, but we're trying our best, and we're using masks whenever we can and distancing. So, okay, I think that might be the last slide.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was maybe a little bit longer than I planned on talking. Sorry, I know I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A, but you know, I love the state of Oregon. I miss it. We usually go back every year in the summer and visit friends and family and enjoy many of the places that I showed you. So happy to take any questions that any of you have about Oregon or anything else.
It's totally fine with that time. Thank you very much, Ryan, for the great presentation. Yes, we started to receive questions. Oh, but I want to show you one comment. A very beautiful nature is ours. Yes, I also noticed that
there's a lot of similarities.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the first question is, what is current ecological situation in Oregon State?
You know, I didn't hear you very clearly, Aida. Say again, what is, and I missed what you said.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think, is it okay now? What is current ecological situation in Oregon State?
Ooh, okay. Still, it was a little tough. The current ecological situation, is that what you said? I think you said
Yes,
something about
yes.
ecological.
Ecological situation, yes.
Okay. Ecological. Okay. Yeah, the ecology is amazing. There's a lot of work with conservation of the natural environment, both with flora and fauna, right? Both with wildlife and with native plant species. There's
Mhm.
a lot of work with preserving the forests because Oregon
Mhm.
has a very long history of forestry as an industry, right? So cutting down trees and selling the trees, but we have to do that very carefully, right? We have to be very sustainable the way we harvest
Mhm.
trees and sell them, right? So because if you're not careful and you cut everything down, then you don't have any more trees. So as soon as we cut trees, we of course try to plant more. We're very strategic about where we cut the trees um, because we know that it's very, very important to maintain the forests. You can still, of course, harvest timber and sell that, but there's been a lot of effort to try to protect the natural environment as much as possible, not only for the trees, but also for the wildlife that live in the trees as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, so there's a big culture and a big high value on the environment, I think, because the weather and the conditions are really nice and you can spend so much time outside. So people value uh, the the ecology and the natural environment as much as they do.
Mhm. Thank you very much, Ryan. Our next question for you. What is the most popular food in Oregon State?
Wow, that's a good question. The most popular food, well, besides beer, um, you know, I don't know if Oregon is known for a specific type of food. I know that
Mhm.
pizza is very popular. Of course, it's we've adopted that food from Italy. It's not a traditional American food, but it seems like in every city
Mhm.
there are very famous pizza places. Um, but again, we don't really have a traditional food, I think, that I can think of from Oregon. There's a huge variety of ethnic restaurants. So personally, I love like Thai food or
Mhm.
Indian food, Vietnamese food, Ethiopian food, Middle Eastern food, and there's a big diversity and
Mhm.
ethnic diversity in the population, especially in the big cities. And so we have a lot of really good ethnic restaurants in most of
Mhm.
the cities. So you don't just have to eat American food. There's more food than just pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs, right? But to answer your question, yeah, I can't think of anything that Oregon is famous for. So yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, there's of course there's lots of fresh berries and fruit. I think it's known for it's famous for the fruit that it produces. Really good apples and berries and cherries,
Mhm.
strawberries, marionberries, blueberries. So we eat a lot of fruit as well in the summers.
Cool. Thank you very much, Ryan. The next question. How do you call people from Oregon State?
You cut out there for a second. How do you call?
People from Oregon
Tell me
State.
again. Ah, good question. Oregonians. Yeah, very
Oregon.
good question. Yeah, I think for most of technically, I am not an Oregonian because I was not born in Oregon. I was born in Washington. So technically, that makes me a Washingtonian. So very strange. Yeah, it's an ending, right, on the state. Ora, so it's Oregon, but the accent
Oregon.
changes. Which syllable you
Mhm.
put the accent? Oregonian is the name. And then
Oregonian.
for California, I guess it'd be Californian. Yeah,
Mhm.
good
Yes.
question.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. The next question: are you a member of the cycling community here in Bishkek?
I am member. I heard of the cycling community in Bishkek. Um, I think that was the question. Yeah. So the kind of cycling I do, I think is it's hard to find local Kyrgyz people that like to do what I like to do on a bike. um, I think for most Kyrgyz that I've found, mountain biking means getting on a bike and riding to the mountains, right? So from Bishkek to Alarcha, they would ride all the
Mhm.
way, and that's a long ride, and that's a very good exercise for sure. But for me, what I like is I don't want to ride on roads. I don't want to ride next to cars and trucks and vehicles. I like to go on trails, and I like to stay only on dirt. Um, and it's a lot more challenging. It tends to be a little bit more dangerous. Although there's no vehicles, so that makes it a little bit safer. um, but yeah, it's a different style of mountain biking, and I haven't found a lot of Kyrgyz people that like to do that. I have found a few for sure, but most of the people that I go cycling with tend to be either other Americans from the embassy or the greater community, expat
Mhm.
community. But I'm always happy to cycle with anybody who wants to try to go out in the dirt and do mountain biking.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ryan. Um, our viewers congratulate you, like saying Happy Thanksgiving Day. And the question is, what did you cook for today's holiday?
Okay, very good question. Yes, thank you for the holiday greetings. Yes, today is Thanksgiving, and we had a traditional lunch. We had a big
Mhm.
baked roast turkey. We had sweet potatoes. We had stuffing, which is kind of a mixture of bread and spices that typically you cook inside the turkey. We had some roast vegetables, just kind of a
Mhm.
mix of lots of different vegetables. Um, and what else did we have? Regular potatoes, white potatoes, roast potatoes. We had that well. Oh, cranberry sauce. Cranberries are. I don't know if Ida, you know what cranberries are. I don't know. I heard the word in Russian, but I forget what it is. But you can buy cranberries here. Do
Cranberries.
you know how to say
I will
cranberry
do.
in Russian or in?
I will check it.
Okay. Yeah. So cranberries is a very sour berry, and you can buy it here. We bought some frozen at
Ah,
Globus,
klukva.
and you make kind of. How do you say? Did you find out?
Yes, klukva.
Yes, that's right. So we make
Klukva.
a sauce with that, and we eat
Ah,
it with the turkey, and it's very delicious when you eat it together. But of course, the most important thing is the desserts, right? For dessert, we had a
mhm.
pumpkin pie, and we also had apple pie. And oh, of course, we ate too much. So yeah, it's a day where we really enjoy food and probably eat more than we should. But hopefully tomorrow we'll do some exercise.
Ryan, is it true that today should be like 10 dishes on the table?
Hmm. Yes. Unfortunately, today was only with our family, right? Because
Mhm.
normally for Thanksgiving, it's definitely a time where you get together with lots of family. Of course, if you have family that are
Mhm.
close. And usually in the US, families travel to be together. Families come together, usually multi generations, like grandkids and their grandparents, and it's a very happy time of
Mhm.
all the family getting together. And usually for our family, when we were living away from the U.S., it's a time that we like to get together with other families who like to eat lots of food and have kids like our kids' age and be together. But unfortunately, because of COVID, we were not able to be together and share the meal with other families this year. So it was only with our family. So we did not have maybe as much food, as much different types of food as we would if it was a very big group of people. Normally, if it's a big group, everyone brings something, and yes, like you said, there's a table with, oh my goodness, 10, 15, 20 different types
Oh.
of food, and it's usually amazing. But today was a little bit more simple than your average Thanksgiving for our family, but it was still a nice time.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And one more question. Tell you the best, happiest day on your life.
Wow, tell me the best, happiest day in my life. That is a good question. The happiest day of my life maybe was when I finished with school, I think. I think when I was completely finished with my master's degree, I think school for me was maybe a little more challenging for some people. When I was in high school, I just wanted to play. I wanted to ski. I wanted to be out. I didn't want to study and do my schoolwork. But I kept trying, and I went to university. I graduated from university. I went to continue with my studies and got a master's degree, which for a lot of people was very surprising for me, just because when I was younger, school was difficult. It was hard for me to concentrate on my studies. But I finally, yeah, I ended up with a master's degree, and I was surprised that I was able to do that, and was very happy when I finally graduated from school and started working in the real world. Good question.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. One more question. Hi, Ryan and Aida. So great to see you and listen to you. I like the picture behind you. Is it the instruction on how to fix a bike? Interesting question. Yes, that's quite. That's
Yes.
picture.
Hi, Aigerim. Nice to hear your question. And that picture is actually I could take it off the wall and show you. It's not a picture on how to fix your bike. That was a gift to me from a friend in on our previous post in Jordan. We were at the embassy in Amman, Jordan, and a friend of mine who I cycled with, he worked for USAID. He gave me this poster, and I put it on a frame on the wall. It's a picture of an old bicycle, like kind of an antique bicycle, maybe from the 1800s, and yeah, it's kind of a diagram, like an engineering diagram of how the bicycle worked, which is different than how bicycles work today. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool poster, so I framed it and put it on my wall.
It's a really nice picture. Thank you very much, Ryan. I think this was our last question. And yes, it was very interesting to learn about Oregon State. I don't know how I pronouncing the name. I hope it's right. So it was really really interesting and wonderful session. Thank you very much, Ryan. And I want to say thank you to our viewers who sent us their comments and questions. And thank you very much, everybody. And it's time to say goodbye. So once again, I want to congratulate you with the Thanksgiving Day, and please stay healthy with your family. And see you in our next sessions. Bye bye, everyone. Have a great